Sausage Party Foodtopia Season 2. So it's been about a year since the last season came out, and if you're not familiar with the show, it's based off the show Sausage Party, which was a raunchy, I believe it was R-rated animated movie that came out, I think 9 years ago. We're about to hit the 10-year anniversary next year, I want to say. So 2016. So it's about a bunch of food that comes to life and realize that people eat them and they just kind of panic and a bunch of crazy stuff happens. It's just like a raunchy comedic movie with not really a deep plot. So the first season I thought was okay. I thought it was an okay season. I thought the animation was okay. I liked the voice acting. I thought the stories was fine, but it heavily relied on the raunchy jokes and everything like that. So it was just an okay season. I gave it a 5 out of 10. Just okay, average, nothing super special about it. You know, I didn't absolutely love it, I didn't absolutely hate it, just harmless, really. So the second season, I wasn't sure what to expect. You know, obviously it can go either way. I gave it a 5 out of 10, so it could have just gone super downhill, or it could have just slightly improved. And luckily, it improved. I actually liked this season a lot more than I liked the first season. The first season, I feel like I said, they relied on the raunchy jokes. The characters were fine, but I don't think they got a lot of interesting story stuff going with them. And it was just average, you know, because it's a comedic show, so you don't expect like a deep storyline. They try to have a storyline, like it's just them trying to set up their society and running into all these problems like we have, like money and stuff, and just class warfare, and because you have the rich and the poor. So it kind of became about that, which could have been interesting, but they didn't really do anything with it, in my opinion. It was just kind of whatever. It's only 8 episodes long, so there's only so much you can do. But this season, I think, was better improved. I think there was better action. I think the animation was improved. Maybe not the visuals. I'm not really sure. They're about the same from what I remember for the first season. But definitely the camera work and everything. I feel like there was better scenes in this season versus the second season. And the jokes and everything didn't rely just on the raunchy humor. Don't get me wrong. There's definitely raunchy jokes. It's pretty much an R-rated, TV show. Maybe not as bad as the first season. But they do cuss a lot. And there's a bunch of, sex jokes and stuff like that. But it's not very dependent on it. This season is really carried by the characters and everything that's happening with them, which I really appreciated, and which is the thing that really improved this season overall for me. I would give it a 7 out of 10, which is to me a big improvement since last season was a 5. I actually really enjoyed this season. I remember watching the first one and just kind of forcing myself to watch like the first few episodes. I was just like, I don't know, I could be watching something better. It's just fine. It got better towards the end, but this first season I think started off fantastic and just ended fantastically as well. Not super amazing, but obviously it was, leaps ahead than the first season. So yeah, it was a good fun season. And kind of spoilers, I'm gonna talk spoilers in a little bit, but it does kind of set up a third season, which I kind of hope it does get. I don't see it going super long. It's not like Rick and Morty or something where like it has a big audience. It's gonna get like a ton of seasons. But a third and final season I think would be great, because the way it ends up, I do want to see what happens to these characters and everything that happens to the main characters and other side characters. I'm kind of invested now. I want to see what happens to them. So 7 out of 10. If you enjoyed the first season, I think you're gonna really love this second season. If you didn't like the first season, this is an improvement, so you can go check it out. I think you'll enjoy it a little bit more. We don't get too much adult animation, which is funny because the last video I did was an adult animated movie. But it is still the kind of case. A lot of our, animation, adult animation, is just comedy, and it's a lot of like family stuff. So you have like Family Guy and The Simpsons and American Dad and even Rick and Morty. It's just shows really based around families. So this is kind of unique in the adult anime landscape, in my opinion, where it's just kind of weird, food things with, it's kind of like a sci-fi apocalyptic type thing going for it, which is really fun because they kind of lean into that stuff in this season versus in the last season where it's just like politics and trying to set up their society, which wasn't as interesting as you would think it would be. But yeah, so I'm gonna talk spoilers really quick to explain the plot. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If you haven't seen the show or this season, go check it out. I do recommend it. 7 out of 10. I think it's enjoyable. So this season starts off where we last left off. So in the last season, Brenda the hot dog bun, who was the girlfriend of Frank the hot dog, died like in the second to last episode. And in the last episode, Frank ends up taking over Foodtopia. They're having like this big election or something like that, and Frank just comes and he's like, nope, you guys are unreasonable. All the chaos that happened in the last season and everything, just like none of you are fit to rule or be in charge, so I will be in charge. And him and Jack the Human pretty much work together to kind of enforce the law and everything. So in this season we pick up where he's in charge and everyone's extremely unhappy. No one likes Frank. It's kind of like a dictatorship. Everyone's kind of miserable, and Jack's just like forcing everyone to do things that they don't agree with, and no one is on his side. Even his friends Barry and Sammy, they don't agree with what he's doing, and he just will not listen to him. So the first episode just kind of shows, the life of Foodtopia and how it is with Frank in charge. And by the end of the episode, he ends up getting exiled. Him, Barry, Sammy, and Jack the Human all get kicked out of Foodtopia, and they're like, we don't want you here. You guys suck, and you guys ruin everything. Like, we're all unhappy. Get out of here. So they get exiled, and Jack's just like, well, my hometown's like a few miles away. There's a big grocery store and everything, so let's go. So the next episode is them adventuring to try to get to that area. And they eventually get there, but the city's abandoned, all the food is gone, there's just a bunch of dead people, and they're like, what happened? And then there's like a bunch of wild berries that chase them and try to kill Jack the Human. So they eventually get away, and they end up at this, like, they can see far off in the distance this big city, which ends up being Foodland, I think it's something like that, what they call it. I don't remember what the city was called. Doesn't matter really. Anyway, so they see her and they leave Jack in the forest. They're like, we're gonna leave you here, we're gonna go check out the city because they're probably gonna murder you. So they go there and just really this utopia, which is funny because their city's called Foodtopia. But anyway, it's like this big utopia where all the food are happy. There's a bunch of refrigerators, everyone has cars, they're driving the human cars. Even when the rain comes out, which was a big problem the first season because they didn't know what to do with rain and it killed a lot of people. They're like, oh no, the rain, we gotta warn people. But they already had systems in place set up to like make cover above the food to protect them. So it's really this utopia, and it ends up like when they start talking to people, it ends up being that these people respect them and love them. They're like, oh, you started the revolution. You woke us up and made us see that humans are evil, and, we fought against them, and now we're free, and we're not going to be eaten by these evil creatures. So they all love him, and Sammy, he loves it there. They have like a big, like, movie theater, and he's like, I'm going to create movies because I like to act and, be artistic and everything. That's like his calling, so he starts doing that. Frank becomes part of the city council, so he becomes a leader that he feels like is respected and loved. And Barry's just kind of the first, he's just like, I don't know, I don't like peace and stuff like that, and I don't know where I fit in. But he ends up finding his place with this jar of mustard called Dijon, because she's like this crazy warrior kind of like him. So they start liking each other, but he joins like their military corps or whatever, which is it ends up being that they have a bunch of humans that they mech control, like in the first season, like they go up their butts. Again, they keep the raunchy humor, so they wear like these butt plug helmets that they like link up to the humans to control them as mechs, which is one of the things I liked about the first season in the movie, where like they could control humans like robots. I thought it was hilarious and cool. So he ends up joining that corps or whatever, and everything seems good for a few episodes, I want to say, until they go out on a mission to get fuel, and it turns out the fuel they're going to get is food for the humans. So they go to this trailer park, and the humans start eating all the food that are hiding out there, living there, and it turns out that the Foodland people are just like, well, we got to give these people food because they keep our refrigerators working. They help us build everything like that. They teach us to read and stuff like that. So they're like, we got to feed them. But of course, Barry's just like, no, this is crazy. We fought this revolution so you wouldn't be eaten by humans, and now you're feeding these humans to keep your beautiful, amazing city running. It's just like, it's not worth the cost. We can't sacrifice anyone to make our lives better, which, you know, I like that. It makes sense, especially in today's society. You can't be sacrificing people just so your life can be better. It's crazy. So Barry tells Frank and Sammy's just kind of like, whatever. Which, again, in this season, Sammy's kind of... In the first few episodes, he's with the group, and then at the end, he's with the group. But, like, in this middle portion of the show, he's away from the group again, which is one of the things I didn't like in the first season. I like the character. I think he's funny, well acted. But a lot of time, he's just, like, off doing his own thing. And then he just... he connects with the characters towards the end, and his big like making the movie thing doesn't really do anything or add anything to the plot, or isn't this big thing at the end of the show. It's just, it ends up being like a joke where he's like, people are going to see my movie and be against war and fighting and everything, and it'll change their minds, and then it doesn't, and he's just like, oh no, I thought it was going to change their minds. And that's like for 4 episodes he was making this movie, and it just ends with a big joke of him being like, oh, I guess I didn't change the hearts and minds of people, which is, it was an okay joke, but again, you kind of sideline the character, just kind of throw him to the side so he's away from the group and the main plot, and it kind of makes the character a little bit pointless, but at least he comes back in the end, which is good, even though he doesn't do too much in the end. So anyway, Frank ends up telling the people about Foodtopia, so they're like, we're going to go to Foodtopia because we're told they're weak. They're unorganized, and they have a ton of food and variety of food, so we can feed the humans for months, and then we can help build our city a lot better. So Frank and Barry are like, no, we can't let this happen. So they try to escape, and I'm passing over a lot of little things, like Jack joining up with the rest of the humans and kind of connecting with them and everything like that. But they try to escape, which they're kind of able to. They go to Foodtopia. Sammy stayed behind because he thought his movie was going to change people's minds, so he ends up getting captured. So they go to Foodtopia, and they're like, this place is going to be a mess, like we left it was a disaster, and they can't get along. And it turns out after Frank and them left, they've been getting along just fine. They're working closer and better than ever, and they're like basing it off of Brenda, who wanted everyone to get along. So they're like, oh, Brenda's like our spiritual guide, so we just kind of want to do good and we don't want to do evil or whatever, and we want to work together. But they warn them, they're like, they're coming, but the Foodtopians don't believe them. They're like, whatever, get out of here. They tie him up and they throw him over the fence, and then the Foodland people come and they capture him, and they're like, we can't get through the front gate, but if you tell us, you know, we know there's a secret route. If you tell us the secret routes, you know, we won't torture you or anything. But they end up torturing them to try to get the information, and they don't get it. But they end up finding a way in because Jack is kind of on their side because he's mad at Frank because they had this whole relationship the first season, but this season, you know, Jack has realized that it's been very toxic, and then Frank, you know, didn't really care about him, and it was like a one-way street. And even Barry, who hates humans, pointed that out. He's like, no, Jack was always talking about you and saying good things about you, and you never went to visit him while he was in Foodland, and you never did anything for him and never asked about him, and you did not care about him unless you needed something from him. So it's this whole interesting thing of a toxic relationship where, you know, Jack finds this lady named Jill who he falls in love with, and they get along, and they don't have a toxic relationship. And again, this kind of makes this season work, where they didn't really have this in the last season. It was just like, oh, man and hot dog are having sex, hilarious, which was kind of cringy, and it was a little funny, but whatever. Anyway, they attack the Foodtopia, and it's this big war, and the humans are killing everyone, and then the Foodtopians try to take over the humans to pilot them and everything like that. And Barry kind of sets it up where he fed the humans like this food full of laxatives, so they end up getting diarrhea and pooping out the food, so they're not controlled. And then the humans try to run away, and they get in this RV, and the season ends with like this helicopter taking all the humans away. Like a big magnet comes down and takes the RV away, and we end up finding out that there's a military installation that survived, and they're ready to fight against the food people. And that's kind of where it ends. Like the war kind of ends at Foodtopia. We don't get much of a resolution there, which I thought was like the weakest thing this season. Like the fighting stops when the humans leave, but we don't see if the Foodlander people and the Foodtopia foods start working together or what really happens. It just kind of ends with them just like in awe of like, oh man, that giant helicopter just took all the people. Which again makes me think there has to be a third season. They might have already approved it and they just haven't announced it yet. But that's where the show ends. Overall, fantastic. Like I said, I skipped a lot of things. There's a lot of stuff that happens this season versus the last season where like I thought you could have just skipped a lot of episodes because it was episodic. But it's a little more cohesive story-wise this season. Like I said, overall fantastic or good. I enjoyed it. A 7 out of 10. A lot more enjoyable than last season. Really like the characters, especially this season. Frank is a jerk, I think more so than the last season, but he was still likable and I'm still kind of invested in his story. Potential redemption next season because he was kind of shitty this season. And I like Barry and Sammy and the new character Dijon the mustard, and Jack the human, and Jill the human was also very interesting. So I like the characters and I want to see their story end. So I do hope they get a third season. But anyway, that's Sausage Party Foodtopia Season 2. 7 out of 10. So if you watched it, did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? You know, what did you think? Big improvement from the last season or just still just as bad? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching, like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.